over the years, people that have reached out because to them, even seeing a picture of harissa or a picture of kipta on the Assyrian Kitchen page brings back memories, because they haven't been able to enjoy that food for the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
And now they have a place to come and do that.
Hello, Assyrian Podcast family. Welcome to episode 71. It's John in Chicago, and this week I bring to you a wonderful conversation I had with Atorina Zomaya of Assyrian Kitchen. It was a hot and muggy weekday as I made the trip to the Jefferson Park neighborhood and walked over to the beautiful blue, can't-miss exterior of Assyrian Kitchen. That lovely exterior seeps into the interior as well, with walls adorned with Assyrian art and family photos. Atorina told me all about the importance of that design decision and why she wanted to open a brick-and-mortar standalone location in the first place. We also discussed different foods, the proper Assyrian names for some of those foods, and making non-Assyrians aware and informed of our historic and culinary footprint on the world. If you're a foodie, linguist, interior decorator, entrepreneur on pretty much any level, you will really enjoy this episode. Support for this week's episode of the Assyrian Podcast is brought to you by Tony Kalogerakos and the injury lawyers of Illinois and New York. If you know anyone that has been in a serious accident, please reach out to Tony Kalogerakos. Tony has been recognized as a top 40 lawyer and a rising star by Super Lawyers publication and has obtained multiple multi-million-dollar awards. Tony can be reached at injuryrights.com or 847-982-9516. Now grab yourselves a snack because you will be hungry after this one, and enjoy episode 71 with Atorina Zomaya. We are recording here at Assyrian Kitchen in the lovely Jefferson Park neighborhood of Chicago. Sitting across from me is the founder of Assyrian Kitchen, Atorina Zomaya. Atorina, thank you so much for sitting down with me and having this discussion.
Thank you, John. I'm really excited. It's been, 9 months that we've been trying to secure this conversation, this interview. So
all
I'm really
good things
excited.
come to those who wait.
Yes, that is true.
So before I usually get into kind of the background story of everybody, so I want to talk about Assyrian Kitchen, the physical brick and mortar location you have now, but we'll get into that plenty down the road. So before we get into any of that, I want to go step into the Assyrian Podcast time machine. I want to go back into childhood Atorina time. So what are some of the earliest memories of your love of food, whether it's a favorite dish, first time helping out with cooking, anything like that?
So I would say that my first memories of food go back to my first piece of bread or my first kubba. I was always the first one to be at the table while the kids were still playing in the backyard at my grandmother's house, basically waiting to start eating and enjoying the feast. I would say that, growing up, I always noticed that my grandmother was spent most of her day in the kitchen, stirring her bushala, making her kipte, and she always had a very peaceful but yet very passionate presence when it was around food, because that's how she showed her love to us, to her entire family and friends. So food has always been part, Assyrian food specifically, has been part of like my memory. And if you look back at photos of me growing up, thanks to my dad, there's always, it's a picture of like all the cousins and the kids together. And if you zoom in, there's a piece of bread in my hand. And so it's like there's proof out there that, food was always on my mind.
It's totally relatable. I was a bread kid myself, so I totally get it. And so growing up for you, what were some career goals that you may have had along the way that you might not have had anything to do with cooking or food in general?
Sure. So I think as a kid, because I really enjoyed talking, I think that I was never shy, and my parents encouraged that. They would always tell me that I should be a snahra, which is an attorney, and that was always ingrained. And I think at one point I even tried, going down that path, but it wasn't for me. That was one of the things growing up that was always on my mind, because your parents told you that's something that's perfect for you because you love to talk. But yeah, and so after that, my background's in marketing and communications. That's where my focus has been as a professional, working in the technology and the software technology space, and building my career over the last 15 years in that space has been great. I think it gives you a lot of structure and the ability to kind of start your own business. So we'll get into that a little bit later.
Sure, some people might think that's completely unrelated, but it helps to have some marketing skill when you have your own empire like this, so to speak. When did the cooking bug specifically hit you, and why do you think it started?
Yeah, I think that, so I was probably the last person in the family that anyone would ever think would have this passion or love for food in this way, right? I've always been the person at the table, not the person, bringing food to the table. And so I think that back in 2011, Assyrian Kitchen was a thought, and it was a thought to basically share our culture. If I take a step back, growing up, I was really grateful, to my parents for instilling that appreciation for who we are as Assyrians. Being a first generation Assyrian American was really important to still have that awareness of the history, of the culture, the heritage, the traditions. So growing up, I learned how to read and write in Assyrian. I still do. And it allows you to have that not only appreciation for the Assyrian history and what we had to offer, but just an acknowledgement of global history as a whole. And so having that, and then looking at food as this way to kind of reach other people. Because growing up, I think when you grow up in two different worlds, and I say this a lot, I felt like I was always growing up in two different worlds, and that was because you spoke Assyrian at home, but you had friends who weren't Assyrian. And how do you balance that? So being able to see the beauty of the Assyrian culture, the beauty of the American culture, and bringing that together, never being ashamed of the differences and celebrating those differences was, I think, the foundation for, fast forward to 2011, thinking of a way to share the Assyrian culture through food was just so clear. And so Assyrian Kitchen started off as cooking classes at a Whole Foods in Chicago, where I would invite guest chef instructors to teach a class. So we would partner up, we would figure out which dishes we were going to focus on, which Assyrian traditional dishes we would talk about and teach. It would always start off, and to this day, this is how our cooking classes are run. We start off with a little bit of history. We do a demo, whether it's pickling or learning how to make yogurt. And then it goes into a hands-on experience where everyone in class, has the opportunity to make the kubbe, the kipte, the dolma, whatever it might be. And then at the end, we sit down and have a shared meal, and it's an experience, and that's something that you still see today in Assyrian Kitchen. But that was the start of it. It was a very simple way to share the culture at a time where I felt that was needed. It's getting to the hearts through the stomach, and I think that with our food, I think our food is delicious. I know we're biased, but I think
anybody can objectively say that our food is delicious.
It is, yes.
And you're almost connecting on two different levels, whereas your cooks and the chefs that you work with are not always necessarily Assyrian, so they're also learning something new. They're learning something, then you're passing it down to your students that you're teaching. So it's almost connecting on two different levels, to the people who are professional on some level and to the people who are just kind of amateur cooks in their own home.
Well, our our chef instructors are usually Assyrian. So okay. they're instructors that have, basically been they were raised eating this food. So and what's interesting is that there's different regions that are represented in how certain dishes are made. And so that's always fascinating to see. As for our guests, they're not usually Assyrian. And so that's the whole point. It's being able to share, again, this window into Assyrian cuisine. And we'll talk more about this, but to talk about the world, these recipes that stem from the world's oldest cookbook, that to me is just so fascinating, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But I just think that that's where that connection is made. It's being able to just sit down and have a meal with people, connect over these thoughts, over history, which to me says a lot. It's talking about the origins and how we can connect in a very simple way over food.
there was a documentary series, probably just a few years ago, that anybody could find on YouTube, where you had mentioned that upon leaving an Italian cooking class that you were taking at the time, where you had just learned how to make gnocchi, it dawned on you that you didn't even know how to make kipta at the time, which is funny because I only know you as a person that does know how to make kipta. So was that like the aha moment that you needed to not only learn how to make the meals that you had consumed your entire life so many times, but also share those recipes with the rest of the world?
Yes, definitely, because it was just one of those moments where you realize, wow, I just came to a cooking class to learn something that was foreign to me, but then something that, we've grown up with, because it was always, again, I don't know if you can relate to this, but growing up, it wasn't, the arts in the food, the art of food or the food arts weren't something that was really pushed as a child growing up. Again, it goes back to, well, are you considering going to law school? Are you considering going to become a doctor or an engineer? Those are the three, right? And I think that the arts weren't highlighted in the same way. And so I never had the opportunity to just sit down. You did help around holiday time, or, like I said earlier, when everyone's making kubbas and the burage, which have a new name now, right?
we'll touch on that one too. I can't wait for that portion of it, actually.
And so I think that these are all, important reasons to say, okay, you know what? I knew that this was a delicious dish. I knew that this is something we grew up on, but I never took a moment to appreciate it in the way I should have. And so it was two-pronged. It was learning how to make these dishes and at the same time very quickly sharing them with others.
And you created Assyrian Kitchen in 2011, and you touched a little bit on some of the details there, but talk us through how you hatched the initial idea. What did you see in your mind as how you wanted to put it out creatively and even as a business model? How did you want to present it to your audience at the time?
At the time, it was really a concept that was built around a cooking class, an opportunity to invite guests that would register for these classes to experience Assyrian cuisine for the first time. And my goal was always to target people who had not experienced Assyrian food, and to give them an opportunity to also hear a very brief history lesson and then go into the food and then make these connections in the class environment. Everything was always hands-on, and again, it was just connecting with different I would say cultures, because what you would hear a lot from certain guests or students would be the comparison to our dishes and what they grew up enjoying. And so those commonalities were always, again, fascinating to me. And then fast forward along this journey, I come across the Yale tablets. So the Yale tablets refer to the world's oldest cookbook, written on clay tablets by Assyrians, ancient Assyrians. So there are 3 tablets with close to 40 recipes. So many things haven't changed. And then you start reading more about, just the ancient food history. For me, it was a moment to pause, because here we are looking at the world's oldest cookbook, and it wasn't getting the attention it deserved. We are eating dishes. Our cuisine goes back to the world's oldest cookbook. Let's take a minute. Take that in. Isn't that the coolest thing ever?
The first civilized humans are still eating more or less the same exact food.
Yes. And so that to me was it propelled me to just kind of go turn this in, this project that I had in my mind, to something bigger. And so along the way, I partnered with the Oriental Institute with Assyriologists that we'd invite them into our cooking classes. We partnered with them on a few programs that the OI led, and then there were times where we invited the Assyriologists to join us. So it would be a conversation with, myself, the Assyriologist, and then the guest chef, and we would talk about the ancient tools that the Assyrians used. We'd talk about the ancient ingredients, what's changed. Dolma wasn't made with rice back then. How did those conversations even begin? Did you just reach out to them? Did they reach out to you? I happened to be there for a meeting with, at the time, the director of the OI. It was in 2012, I believe, and I connected with a few of the folks that were there for this private meeting. And so that's how it started. And since this was always a passion project for me, I didn't always talk about it. Now, this is all I talk about, right? Back then, it was, I work on this project. This is what we do. It's a cooking class. But again, I embraced it fully. It's just that in my mind, it was not where I wanted it to be. And so it was just a matter of building on that. And so working I mean, being in Chicago, born and raised here, I mean, the Oriental Institute is a home away from home. And I remember growing up, my cousins would come into town, family members. I mean, it was always a trip to the OI, even though we've seen it so many times before, but it's this very magical connection when you go in there. And so to be there, to be able to work with the folks at the OI and to build on some of these classes that we had was just, it was huge. It was a big part of, it was a key milestone, I think, on this journey. To this day, we are, still in conversation with the OI. And the goal of that really is to give this connection, it's to highlight the continuity of the old Assyrians, the ancient Assyrians, and the modern day Assyrians. That continuity is still there. We're still enjoying, I mean, I always say this, like the gubbebate, which we now know as kubba, and the Middle East refers to as kibbebat, kubba, right?
Can we talk about that actually?
Yes,
because
let's
we were
talk about
having a
that.
conversation before this all started about how we use technically incorrect terms to describe certain foods. Where did it all begin with you to not discover, I should say, but to research the language and some of the root words?
Yes. So it wasn't too long ago that I was trying to research the term for burage because I felt that wasn't the right word. I went back to Akkadian, tried to do the comparison through the books, and couldn't really find the origin of the word. And then somewhere along, I found that, and this is true, I think, for a lot of different cuisines. When a dish is named, sometimes it's named by one key ingredient in that dish.
Right.
So I don't know if you've heard of it's borax. It's a chemical ingredient. Well, apparently it was used as a leavening agent in the dough. And so the connection that I was able to come across was that's where the word burak over time became what it is today. Because if you listen to how different cultures in the Middle East refer to that type of food, right? It's usually dough stuffed with meat, right, and spices and onions.
So
it's
it was
a variation
effectively
of that.
named after one tiny ingredient in the grand scheme of things.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, and so that's not what we call them here at Assyrian Kitchen. So there's a movement, and the movement is to make sure that we are calling these ancient dishes that we're still enjoying today as a people with a very rich and diverse history, with a very rich culinary history, their right names and giving them the opportunity to have their own pedestal. And so to me, the word here, we call them epitu because that is a savory, it describes what it is. So epitu and not burak. And for one of our Friday night dinners recently, we served what we formerly called basturma, right? And Middle East, and there's a lot of different cuisines that refer to it as that. It's the cured meats. But ancient Assyrians called cured meats midlu. So that's what we call it today.
Okay.
It's very important because that misappropriation, right, of the culture should not be overlooked. And I think as a people who have always been trying to preserve the language, and we've tried to preserve our identity and preserve ourselves, living in diaspora, I mean, it was difficult to really celebrate the arts and to celebrate the culinary arts. And that's why it's very important if you come into Assyrian Kitchen, the arts, the way we curated this venue was very important to us.
In September 2018, you and Chef Dan Sarkis became engaged. And in April 2019, you two opened up a physical location of Assyrian Kitchen in the Jefferson Park neighborhood of Chicago. Was that always the plan long term?
So what's funny is that, I'll take you back. So Chef Dan was actually one of my first instructors at Assyrian Kitchen 7 years ago. We lost contact for about 5 years. And then that's when I reached out to him after 5 years. I reached out to him to see if he'd be interested in partnering on the Assyrian Aid Society King Ashurnasirpal Gala. It's a private event at the Oriental Institute here in Chicago. Mind you, this venue does not have a kitchen. It's a miracle how we're able to create this feast and feed about 70 to 80 people that attend this event. It's actually our third year this year that we continue to curate the menu and execute. And so when I reached out to him, he was definitely interested. And then again, we sort of lost contact over the year. And then fast forward, we got engaged, as you mentioned. So when we started talking about this place, the thought was always to provide the cooking classes, to have a place where we can share Assyrian food, but it was never really in the concept of like a restaurant. So that was never part of the thought, right? But we thought about the product line. We talked about the cooking classes. Private events were definitely on the list, and so being able to establish this place just made it a little bit more, I think, realistic to be able to. Dan has his own restaurant in the city, Zaytun Mediterranean Grill. So his experience and being able to kind of come together and kind of drive it forward with the passion and the intent that Assyrian Kitchen had from the start, which was really to share the Assyrian cuisine. And my goal from the start has been to put Assyrian cuisine on the global culinary map, to give it a pedestal of its own, because it is missing it doesn't have a presence today. In the same way that it should, right? In the same way that it should. And so being able to have this brick and mortar and to be able to invite guests into this place has been really a dream come true.
And I'd imagine that location was not only important to just implement your interior design ideas, which I want to touch on as well, and to have enough space for you to do everything, but could you have pulled this off in a faraway suburb somewhere away from the main Assyrian hubs in like Chicago, Lincolnwood, and Skokie?
I think that it was very important to us to keep it in the heart of Chicago for several reasons. As you can tell, we're on Northwest Highway here in Chicago. It's not the busiest of streets for pedestrians. The way our concept or our model works really is to target audiences that are interested in coming in for an experience. You attended one of our brunches, right?
I did. Yeah. The Mother's Day brunch, which was amazing.
Oh, thank you. And so it's all about it's the experience. It's the full hospitality, the food. You come in here and you really, our goal is to make sure you feel that same warmth that you would if you came into our home. Location was very important. We didn't want to be too far away from the Assyrian community, but our goal is really to open our doors to anyone that's interested in delicious food and coming in and really experiencing food inspired by these ancient tablets, food that's still being enjoyed in Assyrian homes today in Chicago, where we have close to 100,000 Assyrians living here today. I mean, to me, that was the real dream come true, to being able to bring this idea into a city in Chicago where, you know, it's important for people to really know. I mean, you turn around and you're like, well, I think over the years people know who Assyrians are, but how do you really connect with people? It's through food, I think. And so having a meal, getting a little bit of a history lesson in the beginning, and then sharing it with people that you don't know, because our type of dining is more communal. And so it's important for us to make connections with people that you don't know when you come in. But we make sure that you don't leave without that warmth. And that's very important to us, because hospitality is one thing you feel when you go into any Assyrian home. And that is definitely, we hope that that's felt here when people leave Assyrian Kitchen.
And I think there's a big food scene, if you will, in the Chicagoland area where Chicagoans love their ethnic food and they want to figure out how it's made and what the story is behind it. I would even say the entire country of the United States loves that type of stuff, because you can't really get by on burgers and hot dogs every single week, you know? So I think that's a great point that you make, and you fill a void in a city that loves its diversity and its ethnic foods and ethnicity all around. So I love that. And I know something that you've been dying to touch on. You put so much effort into the design and decor of Assyrian Kitchen. Describe to our audience who have not been here yet what they can find within these walls, and tell us why that was important to you.
Sure. I think that the reason this was important, because we wanted people to feel when they walked through our doors to get a sense of what ancient Assyrian royalty would walk into, right? 6,000 years ago. So we have lapis lazuli walls, we have candles, we have art, and that's very important to me, to Dan. And the reason that's important is because as a people, the arts, under the umbrella of all arts, right, tells you the strength of a people. And I think that, and you'll notice that our art here is mostly from Paul Batu, who's based out of California. Love
Assyrian
him.
Podcast guest, by the way.
Yes. He is amazing. When I first saw his work years ago, it was actually at, I think it was at the Mesopotamian Night Gala. I fell in love with his work, and it's very bright. There is some sadness to it, but that is reflective of our people today. And I think that you see this somber sort of state of some of the, just some of the faces in the art, but there's still color. And I think that says a lot about our people, because we've been through so much, but we still continue. We're still here, and that perseverance is something that is very important to us through the language, through the food, through the traditions, and then of course the arts. And that's why that was so important to us. At the end of the day, we wanted it to feel like home. And so if you walk into my home, you do see family pictures of our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and that's also reflective here. So you'll see that. In the corner is my buried cheese box. And so that's one of the products that I launched a few years ago. So it's colorful, it's bright, but it also has a warmth that you would experience if you were to come into someone's home.
And you mentioned your 3 family photos that are along the back wall over here. Can you tell us the story behind these 3 photos and perhaps when they were taken?
Sure. I think that, so the one in the middle is my paternal grandfather. I don't think I know that is. Yeah. I was starting with that one. Okay, so that's my paternal grandfather and grandmother. So that was just a picture of them. I think they're at a wedding or an event back in Baghdad. And then to the right, it's my maternal grandmother, grandfather. My mother's in the middle. My 2 uncles. And then my Aunt Linda. So that was, I think, right before they came to the States, right? And it's interesting, they never smiled in any of those photos, but to me...
We have a lot of those too, with older generations just not smiling in photos.
No selfies, definitely.
I think it was just photography in that era.
Yeah, but I think that just adds, it adds a warmth for me, because it just feels... When I walk in here and you see familiar faces, to me it's home, right? And we just hope that is also something that our guests feel. We always say our guests come in sort of as strangers into this venue, but they walk away, and we always see this, and it's so amazing. People that were just eating a meal together, enjoying a meal, and we usually we have assigned seating. So with intent, we usually like to have 1 or 2 Assyrians, if they are attending the event, to sit with non-Assyrians so that they can also understand how to eat gyupta tomorta with a flat bread, right? And so it's important. So it's by design. Everything is by intent, right? With design. And so seeing people leave this place hugging each other goodbye, saying goodbye the way Assyrians usually do when they're not Assyrians, right? To me, it's just so, that's where you know that this is where we need to be with Assyrian Kitchen. And that's really important.
I was here for the Mother's Day brunch, as you mentioned, in late April, and I totally felt that warmth. Like, aside from the food being great and everything, the atmosphere was phenomenal. There were Assyrians and non-Assyrians alike, and it just felt like a very home atmosphere. And then the way the food was presented and shared at the table was excellent. So you started off with the Mother's Day brunch. In June, for 3 of those weeks, every Friday night, you had hosted what you called Ishtar Nights Dinner Series. Can you explain a little bit about what that whole idea was about?
Sure. So I love Ishtar. I love her story. And actually, a lot of these paintings here reflect Ishtar. And for me, Ishtar is all about love. Even though she was the goddess of love and war, I celebrate the love. And so with that, we made sure that the theme for our first dinner series was celebrating the love. And it was an opportunity to share a little bit of that history and really invite the community to come in to get a taste of these ancient Assyrian dishes inspired by the tablets. And that was really the intent behind that.
So with something like Ishtar Nights Dinner Series and the upcoming series that you have anytime in the future, what goes through your mind when you're picking out the menu for each of those series?
So for the Ishtar Nights and the themed events, it's more about the tablet-inspired menus. So we look back at the ancient menus. the ancient tablets for inspiration. So that's where those menus are created. As for the Taste of Home, which is going to be our ongoing Friday night, it's no longer a series because it's just our Friday night dinners.
Every Friday.
End of July. So our schedule is going to be going up soon. So that's going to be traditional Assyrian cuisine, what you have at an Assyrian home. And so that's going to be really special because so far with our brunches, I think our guests got a glimpse of that. But then there's so much more we can do with our dinners, and that's why we're excited about that starting in late July.
And you like to put your spin on certain recipes. How do you know what aspects of a recipe to tinker with, and what are some examples of classic Assyrian dishes that you've tweaked with maybe some modern twists?
So when we're in the kitchen and sort of testing recipes, Dan and I are always, so again, it's making sure it's authentic in the sense that it's close to how it was or how it should be or how it's enjoyed today. The traditional dishes that will definitely be on the menu, just a few, you can expect kubbe bate, which are kubbe, we talked about that, because that's very important. And that, again, it's sort of, it's a nod to the past and to the present, because that's definitely on an Assyrian table today. You have the bushala, right, and the kipte. You'll have dolma, but actually not with rice. We'll make it with barley.
Aha.
So a little bit
that's
different.
A little unique twist. Yeah.
That's the twist there. Again, so it's keeping for these taste of home. It's really what you would enjoy growing up in an Assyrian home.
What is your favorite Assyrian dish to quote unquote remix with perhaps an American or other ethnic flavoring?
I think going back to, again, we don't call them burage, but I'm just saying that so our guests can connect to what I'm trying to say.
But what do you call them again?
The epitu.
Yeah. Let's get that spreading,
Yes, epitus. I love epitus and I love kubbe. I think those two are really fun to kind of give a twist to. I had an event several years ago where it was Mesoamerica meets Mesopotamia. So those two flavors coming together. Because if you look at like the empanada, or if you look at some of our fried like croquettes that we make, there's so many, so similar. I was in Colombia last summer, and again on the street, so street food, and just looking at how they made their dishes, their traditional dishes, so similar to some of ours, right, that we enjoy. And to me, again, that's where like that, and again, that's more of something that we would make at home. You wouldn't have that here, but it's a great idea for another themed event, Mesoamerica meets Mesopotamia.
There we go.
But it's amazing to see those commonalities. So those are some of the dishes that you can really kind of spice it up in a different way. But I think, having a good bowl of just girdu or harissa or bushala, that's just, my grandfather used to call kipte shorwad malache. So that's like the stew for angels. That's a perfect way to describe it.
Very poetic.
Very. But that's a perfect way to describe that dish. And so it's just like good. It doesn't have to be greasy soul food, or it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be rich. It just has to be something that just warms your soul, right? And that's what I think, a lot of our foods sort of bring out of us, and especially when you're sharing them together in a communal setting, people share that and you hear that, and it's just really good to.
And touching on the rest of your family or some of your other family members, Assyrian Kitchen isn't the only food outlet that you have. You also founded Buried Cheese. Tell us the story of Nana Susie and her methods of aging cheese.
Yes. So Nana Susie arrived in Chicago in 1971, and of course she continued to preserve and pickle and carry on to the traditions that she brought with her, and I think that's so awesome that she did that. And one of them was to age cheese. So gyptato morta, what we have today as buried cheese, is an adaptation of her recipe. And of course, back in Baghdad, she buried it underground. But this goes back to ancient Assyrian methods of preserving, which were buried in clay pots, and we have a few that are here. They're replicas of what you would actually find underground, thousands of years ago, and which were made for cheese, right? And so Nana Susie's berry cheese recipe, of course, we had to adapt in terms of how we aged that cheese, but it's something that, again, we're able to kind of continue. And it's very unique because it's not something that's out there on the shelves today. And when I started thinking about that first product, because that is our first product, that was something that was important to me, something unique, something that we enjoyed growing up. And again, berry cheese is, when you're a kid and your first experience of berry cheese isn't so positive because it's usually a very pungent smell.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other names for berry cheese. And so that wasn't, but wow, like to me, again, it goes back to the history and the traditions that come with it. And people love it. People love berry cheese.
And you do sell them in 16-ounce jars on berrycheese.com.
Yes.
How popular are those?
People love them. And there was a time where I was out at farmers markets selling them, and people just bought them by the cases. I mean, it's a little bit different. Caraway fennel cheese. I mean, it's just, you enjoy it with just bread and chai, or you can have it with shaptia or on its own. I mean, it's always cheese time in my house. So if you love cheese, I mean, berry cheese is definitely something you should try.
One of the great things about both Assyrian Kitchen and berry cheese is that you have recipes, for example, on the Assyrian Kitchen website that anyone can follow. And on berry cheese, you have this section that's dedicated to ways of savoring the cheese. Mm-hmm. And I see these images of cheese sprinkled on salad and on pasta and melted in soup, on pizza and burgers. Do you personally have a favorite application of that cheese? Or do you just love cheese as much as I do? You said, cheese is at your house all the time. And do you just try to put it on everything?
We actually just made it here for our last event, and it was our flatbread with berry cheese, melted with berry cheese. I mean, that was
sounds
just amazing.
Delicious.
Yeah, so bread, cheese, any day, all day, I mean, it just, I'm in heaven, that's my last meal. Bread, cheese, and tequila.
Oh, and tequila. It's to wash all the cheese down.
Yeah.
Going back to the question about your earliest memories of food, who were some people, past and present, who helped develop your talent and mentored you through this culinary journey of yours?
I think the first inspiration would be my grandmother, but my mom was right there. And so to this day, I mean, my mom is still a mentor, I would say, because she always enjoyed cooking. And again, they showed their love through food. But it's one of those things where you have to pay attention to, and you have to have the passion for it, the patience for it, because a lot of our dish, especially the kubbas, right? We talked about that, and we forgot to mention the pies. So what we have is the flatbreads today with meat and onions.
Yes.
That actually goes back to a recipe on the tablet for a wild fowl pie. So the meat pies we enjoy today that have another name, right? Basically, in Assyrian, it's meat breads, right?
Yeah, pretty simple.
It goes back to this ancient recipe. It's sort of the first pizza in a way, right? A lot of our foods just take a lot of time and just love. And if you don't enjoy that, it's hard to really to create something that's delicious. There's times where I'm making cheese back there, and if I'm in a hurry, or if I'm not in the right sort of mindset for the day, right, it doesn't turn out the same way I'd want it to be. And I really think that it is important to enjoy what you're doing all the time and it's just patience. I think this teaches you a lot of patience, just being in the kitchen and enjoying your time back there.
So your grandma and your mother were obviously two very present and positive forces. You have Dan, who you work off of a lot now. And for Assyrians in general, and so many other people alike, really, food and family are so strongly intertwined, right? Do you find yourself being inspired or motivated by your family as a whole when you're not only kind of you're preserving these ancient foods, but also adding a dash of your own personality to them?
I would say now the collaboration with Dan is just on a whole different level. He brings in over 20 years of experience in the culinary field, and it's really allowing us, especially for the themed nights, we're elevating the Assyrian cuisine scene to another level, and which is really, really awesome, bringing in different techniques. But again, that's where it allows us to kind of put Assyrian on that more formal and again, tying it back, Assyrian cuisine, even going back to like the tablets, was refined. It wasn't as simple as one would think. The way they actually blended the ingredients, the spices, the way they prepared them, I think that's what we're reviving. We're bringing that back. So being able to collaborate with Dan is just allowing us to kind of take Assyrian cuisine to a whole different level.
I have some perhaps philosophical questions for you. Grand scheme of things.
Yes.
How much of an emphasis might you put on, let's say, educating the younger Assyrian generations on preserving Assyrian recipes, and why might that be important?
It's so important. Okay, just like language and the other arts, right? Knowing how to prepare food to sustain yourself, and why not make it delicious, healthy food? It doesn't have to be fried. It doesn't have to be. Our food is just healthy. It's good food. It's a lot of the ancient Assyrian diet was based on vegetables and grains, right, and then meat. But I think that it's so important today for the younger generation to get in the kitchen, learn from their elders, learn from people in the house that enjoy to cook, because you know what, your mom and dad might not be there tomorrow to like make that kipteh, and that's something that's really cool with Assyrian Kitchen over the years. People that have reached out, because to them, even seeing a picture of harissa or a picture of kipteh on the Assyrian Kitchen page brings back memories, because they haven't been able to enjoy that food for the last 10 or 15 years. And now they have a place to come and do that. And the other thing is learning how to make. So I had someone from our brunch sessions reach out to us and ask if we can set up a kadeh cooking class.
Nice.
Right? So we do these private events, private cooking classes for groups of 15 or more. And so that was something that she wanted to learn, because she hasn't had kadeh for a very long time since her mother passed. And so to me, that connection, to just have that aroma, to be able to make it, why not learn how to, create those dishes now before, it's too late to make it the way your mom made it or your dad made it. So that's why it's so important. And you should, it's something that I realized a little bit later in life. So it's never too late whenever you're trying to figure out. And there's a lot of different places to turn to learn how to make our Assyrian dishes, which is great. So it's all about having that curiosity and then taking a minute to just learn more about the culture.
Definitely. We're in 2019, and there's a lot of progression throughout culture. We're redefining a lot of stereotypical roles throughout society and within genders. I feel like that it's not the case as much with us anymore, but more so in previous traditional generations. It was often that the woman in an Assyrian household did all the cooking. Mm-hmm. You've taken what was probably long considered to be strictly a duty or a responsibility of a traditional homemaker, and you've made it both a hobby and a successful business. I think it's safe to say that you illustrate the importance of women and men alike to understand that not only can culinary duties in the home be fun, but also a way to expand your mind and familiarize yourself with other cultures. Would you agree with that?
Definitely. Wow, it just opens up a window to connect with, to me, having a passion and like a desire to like learn. So that should be the first thing, right? If you have that, then it's a no-brainer. Learn how to make dishes from like the world's oldest cookbook. I love saying that because wow, that's something that you can share with people. It's just a story that hasn't been told, and this is your opportunity to share it. You have cooks, skilled cooks in your home, your mom, your dad, whomever it might be. Learn from them. Take a minute to ask that question, because if you like your kipteh prepared a certain way, or your dolma, or your harissa, ask. And if you can't, then you come to Assyrian Kitchen and have a meal with us. But I think it's so important because, again, it connects us humans on a whole different level. And I think that's the most important piece. It's having these connections. It brings us closer to one another. I usually love walking around right before the dinner is completed. Dan and I usually like to walk around to say thank you one final time to our guests. And that's where a lot of those questions come from our guests. And it's about the history. It's about the culture. So if others are so curious about, our food, our history, I really think that, it should start from us. I mean, it's just that's when you start learning about others and kind of connecting the dots, and it just brings you all closer together. I don't know how to describe it, but when you travel, it's when you see it, it's when you enjoy it and you embrace other cultures, because we're very similar in so many ways.
And more specifically, how can we help foster a culture where boys happily go into the kitchen and learn to whip up some dishes, Assyrian or otherwise?
Mama's not always going to be there.
Because I know my list of things that I can cook is probably about 4 things long.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Well, again, first I'd say it's important because, I mean, you don't want to come back. I mean, it just, if you enjoy our food and I think it's delicious, why not learn how to make it? It shouldn't be. So going back to the ancient Assyrians, the cooks that were recording these tablets were men, and I know it's a different time, but even the cooks were, the skilled cooks were men. So that gender shouldn't be an issue. You need food to live,
yes.
So why not cook good food? Why not learn how to make some dishes? Ask some questions. There's recipes available out there, and if not, get a group of your friends and we'll host a cooking class, and that's how we'll do it here. It's very I would say it's an art, right? So you can create, as long as you know the basic principles of what these dishes are, and then if you need to tweak them, and we always say this because there isn't one way to make a dish, right? And across the different tribes of Assyrians, there's different ways to make dishes. So there isn't. You shouldn't hesitate. You should just try it. And again, you need to eat. Why not eat good food that you can make at home?
You cook so much, so when someone cooks for you for the first time, is it like a breath of fresh air, I finally don't have to do anything? Or do you tend to look at what they make through a very critical lens of they should have done this differently?
No, I'm still learning, right? So I don't look at it as, oh, wow, I know how to make every dish out there. No, because there's a lot of dishes that I'm still we're experimenting with, or we try to work. So when Dan and I are in the kitchen, we're just trying to figure out what our next menu is. We're working on that too. So for us, and it's a lot of, there's nothing wrong with asking questions and learning, right? So I feel like I'm still learning. And to me, food, so again, ancient Assyrians, two ingredients that were always in every dish, right? For the most part, except the cakes, onions and garlic.
Yep.
You get that in there, I swear your dish will just be amazing. The more garlic, the better. But I think that, I never look at food that way. I prefer the simplicity of food. Fancy food is great, don't get me wrong, but it's just that presentation is very important as well. That's very important. We eat with our eyes before we actually try the food, and I think that's important. But it's not. I don't look at food that way. I don't critique. When I'm sitting down and Dan's always cooking right now. It's a little bit of a shift. So when we're working together, I love working on our dairy products and the breads, and so it depends. So the night of an event, our roles sort of change. I'm front of the house and he's in the back.
Right.
So it's just it's just one of those things where if somebody's cooking for you and they cooked with love, that food is going to be delicious no matter what.
And you've taught for so long. Can you tell us a great teaching moment that you had where maybe a student was not quite confident in what they were doing and they thought they were messing up?
Well, I would say, so in our cooking classes, the way it works is that I love to take more of that historical approach on our dishes and going through the steps. And then I sort of turn it over to now Dan, who leads in terms of the instructions step by step on how to make, and then we both go into the audience and help with the hands-on piece. What's always great, even how to stack a pot of dolma leaves, it takes, you don't just throw it in there, right? And so watching people sort of build their own dolma pots is quite, fascinating to watch. And how you flip that dolma pot, right? For presentation in the platter.
Of course.
Those moments. Teaching people how to make something as simple as mesta. We should never be buying mesta. You got to make your own mesta. No, seriously.
It's that
so
easy,
simple. Huh? Yes, and it's just so much better for you because it doesn't have any of the fillers. It doesn't have any of the preservatives. It's your own mesta. Just made some today. So, and cheeses and breads. That's if you really want to.
Sure.
But I just think that the pickle at home. It's so easy to do. You can do a quick pickle or you can ferment. It's just, you have to have, and I think what's changing now with and this comes up in a lot of requests from people reaching out. Hey, can you make, a batch of like kubbe? Can you make, the burage, or, what we now call a pitu? I think that it's because people are working and not enough time to be in the home and so they just want to go out somewhere and enjoy it. So we're able to give both of those options to people. They can come in and learn in a cooking class. They can set up a private session with a group of 15 or more, or they can come to one of our dinner events or brunches and really enjoy the food. So you can't really push anyone. It's just that if you have the passion for it and at some point in life you want to learn, there's so many, there's information there. I'm so glad that we're preserving it. There's so many different, I think, ways to learn, whether it's on YouTube, going to our site for our recipes. There are other sites. I think it's really cool to see that, right? Because it wasn't there before. But again, our goal here at Assyrian Kitchen is to make sure that Assyrian cuisine is on that global culinary map. It's an opportunity for us to make sure that that appropriation of the culinary arts that we had is not, it has its own restart. It's our opportunity to share our culture through the culinary arts.
I'm here for it, as the kids would say in 2019. Cap this off with some rapid fire questions for you.
Oh.
Favorite Assyrian dishes?
I would say it's hard. I would say all kubbe, like
okay.
all gubbabate.
Nice.
Yes.
Favorite non-Assyrian dishes?
I would say plantains. It's my weakness.
Okay. Favorite meal of the day, breakfast, lunch, or dinner?
I would say dinner.
Okay. Person you would love to make a meal for?
My grandmother. I never cooked for her. I never did that. Yeah. I would make her bushala. Because that was her favorite dish.
I love that.
Yeah.
Celebrity chef, or perhaps just a person you look up to that you would love to make a dish with?
Oh, well, I get to do that all the time.
With
it's
Dan,
a Dan.
right? And he's like, I don't really keep up with the Gordon Ramsays and all of that, but do you look at those people at all and think like, oh, they're culinary geniuses? I would love to do something.
Gordon Ramsay's cool because he's got that attitude that I really like, So that's why. But I really don't have much time to sit and watch TV. Always on the go. But there are a few that I keep an eye out and follow.
Maybe a longer form question here, but one bit of advice for people who want to scratch that culinary itch but are perhaps, for lack of a better word, lazy or afraid of failure and ridicule.
You gotta fail. I know this is a cliche, but to this day, I'm still learning. So for me, it's all about just go with your gut and follow through. And if you're going to say you're going to do something, just go after it. And I think with food, don't be afraid. You can create it, you can burn it, and you can try again. So there's nothing to lose there. And if you're going to make it for your own palate, you make it the way you enjoy it.
One thing we like to ask of all of our guests, and I'll end it like we always do. What's something you would like to tell our entire global audience of Assyrians everywhere?
Wow. That's an interesting question. I would say that we all have a duty, a responsibility, whether it's in the arts, whether it's in another, it's just, if there is an opportunity for you in life to share something about this very ancient and beautiful culture, you need to do that. And don't wait. And there's nothing wrong with celebrating the differences that we have in our culture. And I think that that's one thing that's important. But the only way you get to that is by being curious about everything else that's around you. So if there is an opportunity for you to share your culture through the paintings that you see here, through the food, through your storytelling, through these podcasts, like, wow, that needs to be told. And it's important. Why? It's important because it just brings out the color and the beauty in all of us. And then at the same time, it's being able to listen to others and other cultures and taking that in and just sort of building on that. Like, that to me is so important. So don't hesitate. I think it's very important to celebrate who you are.
You can check out more details on Assyrian Kitchen at AssyrianKitchen.com, and on Facebook and Instagram, just search Assyrian Kitchen. Atorina, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I love talking about
awesome.
food. I love eating food. This has been a great episode, and I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you to everybody for listening to this episode in its entirety. We appreciate you all. A reminder that if you have not subscribed yet to the podcast, you can do so using pretty much any podcast app on your smartphone. Also, check out AssyrianPodcast.com. There's a list of the more recent episodes up there for you if you need some catching up to do, and you can also read more about the team. As always, we do this because of you, for you, and we appreciate all the support and all the listens week in, week out, and we'll be back next week with more good Assyrian Podcast content.